And good morning, Birds fans. We put Halloween in the rearview mirror, the first half of the season as well, and the trade deadline. And Johnny Mac, I got to tell you, even though the Eagles didn't do anything yesterday at the trade deadline, Howie Roseman, not mad at you. I'm sure that he made many a call and had some conversations, but if there wasn't a deal on the table that he believed made the Eagles better short term and didn't hurt them in the long term, he didn't pull the trigger on it. I'm not all that upset. I was on WIP last night, took a couple calls. Oh, how are you supposed to be the biggest trader?
That's amazing.
You get on his case because he's not making deals. I didn't buy it. He made his big deal prior to and getting Kevin Byard. And even though some pretty good names did jump around the National Football League, can we play the Commanders now that they don't have their true defensive
the Eagles,
pass rushing specialists?
The Eagles, I mean, I joked before we came on talking to Xander. I'm like, Howie's got to get his timing better. You know, if you get Kevin Byard on the deadline, everybody's thrilled. But it comes a little bit earlier. And by the way, you get the startup costs at least out of the way a little bit. He's already on the field. That's their splash. And that's a pretty big splash, because it didn't happen on the day you wanted to happen to. Doesn't mean it didn't happen. Or to some people, evidently it does. But, I mean, look, a lot of these rumors are bull, what to begin with, but and they're agent driven and all that kind of stuff. Then there's bits. I mean, the Eagles don't need defensive front people, and the biggest names to go were defensive front people. So I get the people. There was a weird edge rusher rumor about the Eagles late in the process, and I'm like, what? I mean, they may, if anything, they got to find more snaps for Nolan Smith, who they drafted in the first round, I believe, Jody.
Oh, yes.
Check my notes. That's a first round pick. They're not going to give up on him and bring in Chase Young after 8 games. That's not how this works. A lot of it is just goofy. Now, the one player I think there was some legitimate interest in, but again, it was more agent driven than anything else, and that's Jalen Johnson in Chicago. He's a very good young corner, and that was just about talent. But again, Howie wants a deal, and they wanted a second round pick, and the Eagles have 2 second round picks. They have their own pick. And remember, their second round pick isn't as good as, say, Chicago's second round pick to get Montez Sweat. That's essentially a bridge first round pick. That might be the 33rd pick in the draft. The Eagles' second round pick might be 64. There's a big difference. So their second round pick, number 1, isn't as valuable as typically other people. Now they have the Saints pick as well because Mickey Loomis is Mickey Loomis. But they didn't want to give up a second round pick. And then you start talking about third round picks, same thing, their pick. And they don't even have a third. They have a compensatory third round pick coming, but you can't trade that.
You can't trade it because they don't officially have it yet.
So it just wasn't a fit. And obviously, and you move on, you turn the page, and Buffalo probably had the most interest, and they had to turn the page because they didn't want to give up a second round pick, and they went after Rasul Douglas, their old buddy, and they got him. So I
was going to ask you about Rasul Douglas. Rasul Douglas is a much improved player from the time he was here in Philadelphia. I remember watching Rasul in Green, and he was a boomer bust type player. He would make good plays. He's a guy who could get you an INT every once in a while, which has not been a strength of this Eagle team this year. They don't have very many INTs, and the one that they got this week was kind of a gift. As great a game as Sam Howell played, he just airmailed that ball and threw it right to Reed Blankenship. It wasn't like Reed made some great athletic plan and he kind of threw it right to him. So that has been one thing that has been lacking is they haven't got the other team to turn the ball over. They don't have guys to get INTs. Rasul Douglas was that even when he was here in Philadelphia. Now, it would be balanced by the fact that he'd bite on a double move and get burned for touchdowns, and everyone would remember those plays and forget his INTs. But he's a pretty good player, has been since he left here in Philadelphia. They gave up a third-round pick to get him, but they got Rasul and a fifth back. So it's not really a third. It's the difference between a third and fifth for Rasul Douglas. You don't think he would have been a fit with the Eagles, or do you think the price was too high?
Well, I think they gave up a fifth and got back a third. That's a little bit too high. Rasul, remember, he had great number. Even here, he had really good ball skills. He just, had natural nose for the football, but it took him a while when he left Philadelphia. I mean, he was with a bunch of teams. I'd have to look up how many teams before he landed in Green Bay, and they sort of got him going in the right direction again. Interesting, they put him in the slot. So it's, maybe more people are looking at bigger bodies in the slot because I know Green Bay used them there quite a bit.
And if there's one position the Eagles have been like searching for an answer more than any other from the time their slot corner got hurt very early in the season, it's been the slot, Johnny Mack. And that's where Rasul Douglas plays.
But I don't think he's a slot corner. I still don't think he's a slot corner. And the Eagles got a bunch of guys like that they can throw in the slot, and they have been throwing in the slot, bigger body guys. And they have Bradley Roby coming. I think everybody forgets that Bradley Roby's here, and he didn't put him on injured reserve, so he's going to be back, and we'll see. They're having a walkthrough today. We'll get the estimation.
Yeah, he's missed 2 in a row, right?
Yeah. So
if he doesn't play again this week, it'll be a question as to whether they should have put him on here.
Yeah, exactly. So my guess is he's going to be back at practice somewhat. We'll see how the week progresses. Unless they screwed up the diagnosis, and they don't want to do that. But he's going to be back either way, whether it's this week, next week, even if it does take 4 games, he's going to be back. And ultimately, he's going to be the slot corner. And I think everybody forgets he's here because he was here for such a short period of time. And I think he's more of a natural slot corner. And I think he has something left. We'll see if they're right or they're wrong. But I do think you saw it in Los Angeles for a very brief period. And remember, that was his first game off the street against pretty good slot receiver. And he settled things down a little bit. Wasn't perfect, but he settled things down. And I think he'll do the same thing when he comes back. He knows how to play. Probably not as athletic as he once was, but the Eagles play a ton of zone coverage, so you can kind of mask that a little bit. And I think ultimately when he gets back out there, they'll be fine. They'll be fine. But the question is, the guys stay healthy. But that's every team.
Right.
I mean, that's what I got with the Chase Young stuff. It's like Reddick and Sweat. I got this criticism of the Eagles. Reddick and Sweat are playing too many snaps. It's just not how it works. Do you think Chase Young, the first thing, and by the way, this isn't fair. Washington threw him under the bus as soon as they trade him. He's freelancing. He's undisciplined. He doesn't do what he's told. Maybe some of that's true. Maybe some of it isn't true. But, that always gives me a sour taste when people do that after they trade somebody. Either way, you really think he's going to be happy getting 20 snaps a game? People, Josh McDaniels got fired last night for people waking up and don't know, and Dave Ziegler got fired, which is kind of meaningless middle of the season, but he's a disaster as he was the first time. The most important part of all of this is managing people, coaching. managing people more than X's and O's. I say it all the time. If you're hiring this, I'm not the first one. I'm the 97th one. 9,071 around this league. If you're hiring a scheme, you're doing it wrong. You can't just plug the 53. How many times have I said that, Jody? You can't just get the 53 best players and say, oh, Chase Young is better than Brandon Graham at this stage of his career. Go get Chase Young. Go get Chase Young. You could do that in Madden. Can't do that in the NFL. So is Chase Young better than Brandon Graham at this point? Yes. Is Montez Sweat better than Brandon Graham at this point? Yes. Do you want to give up a first round pick for Montez Sweat? Because guess what? Your second round pick ain't as good as Chicago's. So you got to go above that.
Right.
With Chase Young, you don't even have a third round pick. And even if you did, it wouldn't, you'll eventually get one with the comp pick, but you can't use it right now. So what are you going to do? You're going to go up to the second round and give them a second round pick? I mean, come on.
Yeah, I didn't think there was any chance they were making a trade for a defensive end. Two big ones moved. Yeah, we won't have to face them this year, but they were already done with the Commanders. That's just one of those quirks.
Well, they got to face Chase Young again. So they'll have
right,
to
because
see
San Francisco's yet to come, but that's out of Howie Roseman's hands. There's nothing he can do about that, and the Eagle coaching staff, of course. Yeah, no, the only positions that I thought the Eagles may be able to get something done would be linebacker, where they almost never put assets in. I thought the Zaire Franklin rumor that I heard yesterday was interesting because a former Philly guy had gotten into the scuffle with the Eagle players back in camp. You were there that day. A good aggressive player who I thought could have upgraded the linebackers. Don't know what the asking price was. He didn't get dealt anyway. He had signed a contract extension for only 3 years and $10 million. So that fits Eagle mode. Don't want to overpay linebackers. And he was a reasonably priced linebacker. I thought that was a chance. And I thought slot corner was a chance. They didn't get him. If they talked, they didn't get the job done. I don't think it's reason for panic. I don't think it's reason to hold Howie Roseman accountable, because how does he not come away with one of the, it wasn't that great an upgrade. Like, I would like to see Russell Douglas come back. I'm of the mindset, hey, if he's been doing it good again, this is just maybe I'm different than you and different than others. I don't give a flying fart what it says when they measure you out. If you're 5'10" or if you're 6'1", if you can play the position, you can play the position. I'm not going to not acquire you and not believe that you can't play it because, oh my God, he's 6'1". You can't have a 6'1" guy playing corner. Yeah, you can if he can play it. And Russell Douglas has proven to me the last couple of years he can flat out play it. So if they've been able to get Russell Douglas and bring him back, I know that they liked Roby. How many snaps did Roby play in the Rams game? Like 40? Not even?
No.
He didn't play half a
20,
game.
Yeah.
So you're hanging your hat on the fact that, hey, he looked real good for 20 some odd snaps before, shockingly, a guy who's had an injury history got injured, missed 2 games. That's a little thin ice that they're walking on. Now, hopefully it doesn't go out from underneath them, but those are the only 2 places. Anybody else who, how do you not get a star player who gets available? Because you're right, John. He doesn't fit here. It doesn't mean he's not a great player. It doesn't mean he's not going to go somewhere else and be really good. He wasn't going to come in here and be happy with his role, and they weren't going to be able to give him what he wanted to. So, yeah, please let the star-chasing Howie Roseman didn't get the job done line of thinking without putting it in the proper context of adding him to the present-day Philadelphia Eagles. Don't go down that road, because it's just going to make you look stupid.
Yeah, well, you're right. Well, the star, obviously, you're 100% right on that. But even role players like Zaire Franklin, I'll use him as an example. The Philly stories are great, especially when it works. And, Hassan Reddick, it works. And the St. Joe's prep guys, and it's working with Swift. And it's always an extra little punctuation. Oh, he's coming home. And
Kevin Byard. We're only 1 week removed.
Oh, yeah, Byard. I forget.
We bring back Philly guys, Kevin Byard.
Kevin as well. We'll see how that works out. But, what they need is a coverage linebacker. And Zaire is not a coverage linebacker. He's a downhill linebacker. He's a really good one. They already got one of those. If you look at the Washington game, Nakobe Dean was great against the run, was great, and he was awful in pass coverage. And we need to get somewhere in between there. Just be really good against the run and good in pass coverage. I think that's what they need. They need a pass coverage linebacker, and that's not Zaire Franklin. Rasul Douglas, they already got 6'2" slot corners. They're, they love
why
Eli
do you go
Ricks.
6'2", John? What is the difference? If a guy can play the position, has Rasul Douglas in the last 2 years not proven that he can play in the slot?
Yeah, but
why do you think that you would evaluate him differently because he's 6'2" rather than 5'11"?
Well, it's not me evaluating him; it's the NFL.
No, you just said it, so I'm assuming it's your evaluation.
Well, yeah, I don't think long term, 6'2" guys are good in the slot. I said the same thing with Bradbury. I mean, they could stick Bradbury in the slot and get Jalen Johnson and do it that way.
So you think
and Bradbury's a much better
last
player.
2 years when he's been productive and played well for him was actually a mistake.
There is short area quickness issues with long and lengthy guys, which is the reason the NFL does business the way they do business, because so many of the slot receivers, and Cooper Kupp's at the top, but he's not the only one. There's far more slot receivers that are option route guys that are short, that are quick, the Julian Edelman types, the Wes Welker types, the Cooper Kupp types. Those are the guys that dominate in the slot. And big, long guys, they're made to deal with the Mike Evanses of the world, not those guys. And when you hit those guys, now also Green Bay, I think a lot of people don't realize, everybody doesn't use the same scheme. So Green Bay, when they threw him in there, and they threw him in there out of desperation to begin with, they modified their scheme to sort of mask some of those deficiencies a big, long corner has. He's done a nice job. I'm not saying he's done a nice job. I'm saying long-term, the Eagles don't want that in the slot. Sean Desai already proved he'd do it. He continues to do it with Eli Ricks. He tried it with James Bradburn. They're like, we got to get the hell out of this, and we got to get to where James is most effective. I think Rasul Douglas would be a great fit for this defense at outside corner because he's got tremendous ball skills. He's a tremendous zone corner. And I always thought, you know what? If he could have hung on past Jim Schwartz to Jonathan Gannon, he would have been a great fit. Outside, not inside. And because he's great looking at the quarterback. He's great. He's got great ball skills. As we got a West Virginia guy, he'll like that. Mike Gill in the green room. I think he'd be a good fit, but they don't need an outside corner. They need a real slot corner. And we'll see if Bradley Roby is that. He's more of a slot corner than Rasul Douglas for what the Eagles want. Well,
then I'm disagreeing with both you and the Philadelphia Eagles. I'll determine whether I think a guy can play a position by actually watching him play the position.
They're not playing the same defense, Jody. They're not playing the same defense. They're not asking the player to do the same things. That's why I say all the time on this show, not everything is in a vacuum. You can't just say, this guy did this here, so he's going to do the same thing here. It doesn't work that way. I've said it for years when people would criticize, if Justin Jefferson came here instead of Jalen Reagor as a high-profile example, yeah, he's still going to be a great player because he's a great player. He wasn't going to put up the numbers that he put up in Minnesota because they have a high-volume passing attack and have from day one. I've said that all the time. It's not a vacuum. So the same thing is not going to happen, and we're talking about a role player. So when you have role players, you're looking for players that fit a particular role. The Eagles already have. They tried it with Bradbury, as we said, who's a really good player, and they wanted to get the hell out of that as quickly as possible. They're still trying it with Eli Ricks because they have to, because Bradley Roby isn't ready to play yet. They've already tried it. They don't want it. They want it. They want the more traditional slot corner, and that's why they're trying to get back to Roby. They'd love to have Avonte Maddox, but they don't have Avonte Maddox. Avonte's one of the best nickel slot corners in the NFL, but he's hurt. But that's what they want, but he hurt. He got hurt.
Right, and you can't put a guy out there that's hurt. Do we not consider the slot corner a full-time position for the Eagles?
Sure.
Okay. Because maybe I misunderstood what you said, because you said we're talking about role players. The slot for the Eagles is more than just a role player. They're in slot a lot.
No, you're misunderstanding what I'm
I must have.
saying. The role player, you can't have a superstar at every position. So, Rasul Douglas in Green Bay and Buffalo and Carolina and Las Vegas and everywhere he's been is a role player. He is not a star player. That doesn't mean he can't be an impactful starter, and he's done some good things, but he's not a star player. That's what I'm saying by role players. You can't have a star at every position. So everybody's got to have their role players, and those role players got to fit into specific roles. In the case of the Eagles, Avonte Maddox he's on the tightrope. He's really good. Would I call him a star? No, but he's a really good player. They have role players all over. They have more stars than most teams, but Sue Opeta, when he's starting, he's a role player. He's not a star.
So you're either a role player or a star player. There's no in between.
You're going to get bogged down in semantics. Now, I don't know if you're being honest here and not
I'll be
understanding
100% honest, John. Why would I lie to you? I'm asking
because you want to win. Because you want to win the argument and say.
I'm just trying to understand the position.
Semantically, it's Rasul Douglas is not a star player, so to me, he's a role player. Now, if you want to say a starter's not a role player, well, then okay. We'll go down that route. That's fine.
That's what I'm asking, is there a position in between star and role?
So he's not. It doesn't change the thesis of he's not a fit for the Philadelphia Eagles in the slot. That's not what they want in the slot. They want Avonte Maddox in the slot. You saw it. That's the template. It's really hard to replicate it. But Bradley Roby is a hell of a lot closer to that type of player than Rasul Douglas. Now, did they try to persevere through because they can't find? They use Sidney Brown in the slot. He's not even a cornerback. They're trying to throw everything at the wall. They've used 8 different slot cornerbacks. But when Roby is healthy, in theory, it stops.
Well, he's got to get healthy, and that's a bit of a thin ice situation because A's older and B's been a historically injured player, and he's still injured right now. I understand exactly what you're saying there. If Roby, Roby's healthy, you got a crystal ball. Roby's healthy. He's your guy. You don't need to go get Rasul Douglas. I got you. But you don't know that right now. You don't even know that he's going to be able to play this week.
You just go with Ricks. You already have that player. You just go with Ricks. You think
Ricks is as good as Rasul Douglas right now?
Well, they love Ricks and long term. No, not right now. But the point is, I can't believe we're getting bogged down to Rasul Douglas. I mean, you have a group of players. Same thing with Nolan Smith. You have young players. You don't just want to say after 8 games, all right, these guys suck. Same thing with Calais Ringo. Everybody's Calais Ringo can't get on. It's 8 games. They're not giving up on him. They got 3 6'2" corners. You want a 4th one? They got Mekhi Gardner. They got Eli Ricks. They kept these guys for a reason. I mean, you want a 4th one? It just doesn't make any sense to me. Is he more ready to play right now? He's a veteran player. Sure. But why are you keeping these guys then? Why are you wasting your time with these guys? Why are they here? I mean, you can't have a veteran at every particular position, and you're certainly not giving up draft capital. That's a significant pick again. Now they got a 5th back, but they're giving a 3rd. The Eagles aren't giving that up for Rasul. And I'm not picking on Rasul Douglas. If they needed an outside corner, I'd say, yeah, take a shot. take a shot. But they already have this player, the redundancy of it, and Howie made this mistake with Golden Tate years ago, bringing him in when Nelson Aguilar was here. And you have this redundancy of 2 slot receivers, and it didn't work. He tends to learn from his mistakes.
All right. Yeah, you and I see this a little differently. I like to judge guys for what they've done on the field, not try and project what they would or wouldn't do because of their size. But we'll agree to disagree. He's John McMullen. I'm Jody McDonald. We're taking a quickie timeout. I see one Mike Gill, who I was exchanging texts with this weekend. Went well for both Gill and myself. We give you details on when we come back. Mike Gill from the Sports Bash down the shore up next here on Birds 365.
Go to get your